Andy and Betty had 864 stamps altogether. Andy gave Betty, so question 17, Andy and Betty had 864 stamps altogether. Andy gave Betty some of his stamps, and Betty's stamps increased by 60%. So in return, Betty gave Andy some of her stamps, and Andy's stamps increased by 30%. Then Andy gave some of his stamps to Betty, and Betty's stamps increased by 80%. In the end, each of them had an equal number of stamps. Damn, find the percentage increase in the number of Betty's stamp. So it's a internal transfer kind of thing. Okay, so for this, we're just gonna work backwards. Okay, so nothing special to be honest for this. Okay, so first is we need to go from the end over here. So in the end, each of them had an equal number of stems, and we know that altogether they have 864, and they didn't give anything. So in this case, what you can do is in the end, they both each got, in this case, it's 64, and then we divide it by 2, and this will give us, so let's calculate, it's 64 divided by 2, 432. Okay, right, they both each got 432. Okay, so now let's move on. There's a lot of transfers, so we'll start with the first one. Let me make it blue over here. Okay, so blue, so there's 3 transfers lah, the first, second, and third. So we work from the third one. So I'm gonna write here third transfer. In this case over here, the third transfer. This, okay, all right, and then okay, third transfer. Okay, so we're gonna work backwards. So third transfer. So over here, we know that Betty stamps increased by 80%. So in this case, Betty is 180% and 100%. Okay, which also means that it is also 432 stamps as well. So when we go to Betty 100%, okay, that means this will become 432, and then we divide by 180 and then times 100. Okay, so we use a calculator over here. So divided by 180 and then multiply by 100. Okay, and this will give us 240. So Betty at first got 240, so we can get the difference. Okay, so Betty received from Andy is equal to 432, right? And then minus 240, and this will give us, so 432 minus 240, this is equal to 192. In this year, Betty received from Andy 192. Okay, and since Andy gave 192, that means he lost. So when we do reverse, we actually add. So Andy amount in the third transfer, right, is equal to 432 plus 192. Okay, so what would this become? Plus 432, 624, 624. Okay, so and the amount in the third transfer got 624 in this case over here. Okay, so this is the first part. Okay, let's move on to the second transfer. So Betty received, okay, yep. So next one, let's make it red lah. Okay, so red over here, it says in return, Betty gave Andy some of her stamps. Okay, I'm gonna whoop, and then stamps in Andy's stamps by 30% over here. Okay, so it's the black. So this will be the second transfer. So I'm gonna put here second transfer. Right. So from here, still nothing special, honestly. Okay. So this will then be just red. Okay. So, oh, oops. For the second transfer, that means Andy increased by 30%. So Andy got 130%, and this is equal to, in this case, 624, right? Okay, so same thing also, Andy 100% is equal to 624, and then we divide it by 130 times 100, and what will this give us? Divided by 130 times 100, this will give us 480. Okay, so that means Andy, he received from Betty, right? So Andy received from Betty in this case, which is equal to, so Andy received 624, okay, minus 480. Okay, and this is equal to, so 624 minus 480, this will become 144. Okay, so now with this, Betty amount in the second second transfer, okay, is this one, right? Betty got 240, which is got 240 plus what do you call this, 144, and this is, we can calculate it, 384. Okay, so this is the second transfer in this case over here. Okay, I'm gonna put this as red. Okay, and then from here we can go on. Oops, let me just move all of this over here. Okay, so from here we can move to the first transfer. So first transfer, I'm gonna make this green. Okay, so Shift D, and he gave Betty some of his stamps, and Betty's stamps increased by 60%. Okay, so for this is the first transfer. Okay, so this one, I'm gonna make this green as well as over here. So in this case, the first transfer, I'm gonna make an arrow so at least easier. Okay, so the first transfer over here. Okay, wow. Okay, like this. Okay, so for the first transfer, why does it cross like this? Okay, so for the first transfer, and the Betty's time increased by 60%. So it's the same as what we see over here, right? So Betty increased by 60%. Okay, so Betty is 160%, and what did she get? 384. So it's 384. And then what's Betty's 100%, which is equal to, I'm gonna put it down here, 38, no, 384. Okay, and then divided by, so 384, okay, divided by 160 times 100. So 384 divided by 160 times 100. This will give us, oh, 240 again. Okay, all right, so then from here we know that initial one, so Betty had first got 240, and Betty in the end got 432, 432. So that means Betty increase is equal to 432 minus 240, which is equal to, okay, so 432 minus 240, right, which is equal to 192, 192. Okay, so that means Betty, so we know Betty at first, so 100%, okay, is equal to 240, right? So 190, 240, sorry, 240, right, is equal to 100%. So that means 192, or I would say Betty increase in percentage, right? Betty increase in percentage is equal to 192, and then divided by 240 times 100%. Okay, so we go divide by 240, okay, and then times 100. Okay, and this will give us 80%. So the answer to this is 80% over here.